This podcast is for SEO professionals, and each week, with the help of our wonderful guests, we discuss the important stuff that actually affects our careers and progression, but sadly often doesn't get talked about. You know, the invaluable soft and interpersonal skills that are often taken for granted, such as the skills we need for listening, time management, communication, and more. We also talk about the big issues that affect us and our careers, such as burnout, imposter syndrome, self-belief, saying no, plus other big issues and obstacles. With this podcast, we want to share knowledge on topics that unlock our listeners' true potential and enhance not only their careers, but all parts of their lives. So, are you ready to prioritize your own personal growth and career development? Then let's crack on with this week's episode. Hello, and a very warm welcome to the SEO Mindset Podcast, where your hosts are myself, Sarah McDowell, and the ever so fabulous Tasmin Suleiman, with episodes going out every single Thursday. Now, this week we have a cracking guest. We have Ibukun Oluleye joining us, and we talk about the issues around the lack of diversity in the creative and SEO industry. It is such a powerful and authentic conversation where we talk about why diversity is so important, where we have issues, and Ibukun gives us some examples. We then talk about the impact of community, and we specifically talk about the Be Digital community and how that can help. Who is Ibukun? Wow, she wears many hats, from a brand executive at a Birmingham agency to head of events at one of the UK's largest Black marketing communities. And she is also a founding member of Birmingham Women in Marketing. She has a passion for platforming and underrepresented voices, helping juniors and young people build their personal brand, and helping companies get to grips with brand strategy. Just a reminder of how you can support the podcast. So if you enjoy what me and Tasmin are doing, remember that we are set up on Buy Me a Coffee, so you can give us a one-off donation, and there'll be a link in the show notes to do that. Shout out and huge thanks to everyone who's already done that, and a reminder to share our podcast and episodes with your friends, family, your loved ones, your pets, anyone and everyone. Just get the word out there. Right. Shall we crack on with this week's episode? And a very warm welcome to Ibukun. Hello.
Hello, it's lovely to be here.
I mean, it is an early start. I don't know why I suggest... I thought it was such a great suggestion, you know, early, what's the saying? Early bird catches the worm and all. But when that alarm went off this morning, I was like, what? Why did I suggest early morning recording?
No, I feel more exhausted pigeon than early bird, but yeah, we're here.
Did you say an exhausted pigeon?
Exhausted pigeon. That's the vibe right now. But we're still going to bring lots of energy. It's still going to be great. Early morning.
Please tell me that you don't feel like a pigeon is your spirit animal.
Oh no. I feel like I don't know if that's quite like insulting to yourself, a bit derogatory. But I'm not a big fan of pigeons. But no, what would be my spirit animal? Oh, I don't know.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. I think I'm a bit of an otter, maybe. I feel like they're quite cute, but they're a bit, a bit weird sometimes. I don't know. I think sometimes I give a bit otter vibes. I don't think that's what I want my spirit animal to be, but I think sometimes that is what I come across as, kind of quite squirrely at times, doing lots of things, running a bit everywhere. That or a chicken, a bit of a headless chicken at times. Yeah.
I think we've all had. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
You've turned the question onto me. I've been told that I've kind of got golden retriever puppy energy and vibes, like excitable, high energy, like can't sit still kind of situation. But yeah, I think there is times where I feel more sloth as well. Sloth or sloth?
Sloth in my head. Never heard.
Sloth. Sloth. I think people say sloth. But yeah, because I'm just so doing stuff. There's times where as soon as I sit down or I'm slightly in the horizontal position, I just sleep.
No, that sounds great though.
So what's the sleepy? Yeah, sloth is the ultimate sleepy animal. So times where I'm a bit sloth, times where I'm a bit like puppy, golden retriever, like that kind of vibe.
Definitely two ends of the spectrum, but good to know. Yeah,
I did not think we'd be kicking off talking spirit animals, but here we are. Listeners, why don't you reflect and have a think about what spirit animal you might be? It might be surprising. Right. We are not here to talk about spirit animals, obviously. We are here to discuss all about the impact of community in the industry and lack of diversity in SEO and creative talent. So let's kick things off by talking about the issues around lack of diversity in the creative and SEO industry.
Yeah. I think one of the easiest ways to illustrate that is I remember when I was back at uni, and I remember sitting in a particular lecture and there was about maybe 203 of us there. And I studied marketing, so a bit boring, but very, on par and very relevant right now. But I remember I was sitting in that lecture and I was sat at the front because otherwise I wouldn't pay attention. And I turned around and I looked at we were chatting about a particular advert and everyone was sort of buzzing about it. And I turned around and I was like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why this is clicking with so many people. And I think I was aware that I wasn't in I went to Durham University for a bit of context. So not the most diverse university. But I remember turning around and realizing I'm the only black person in the room. And realizing, is that the reason why it's clicking? But I was then thinking, there's so many other things that people have lived so many other lives. But when it would continually happen, I then sort of realized, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe there is a cultural experience that I've had that isn't aligned with other people in the room here. And so when I'm looking at some of these ads, I'm thinking, even as someone who's lived in the UK for the vast majority of their life, there's still something that logically I can look at and think, okay, I understand why it's working for some people, but it just doesn't resonate with me. And I think that's something that's always stuck with me, that, when there isn't that representation there, sometimes what we think is a cultural truth or something that is definitely going to resonate with audience just misses. And I guess that was something that always stuck with me.
And how, in that moment, how did it make you feel?
I think it was more of a slight shock to the system. I've always grown up in very diverse communities. And I think it was, going into a place when it's not as diverse. That's just the fact of life sometimes. But I think it was more of a shock to the system of, might be what my rest of my career looks like. And I think it was it just made me a bit more determined to make those spaces for people and to find those communities and find those people. And when I then go into jobs and roles and work with clients, to make sure I bring that perspective of hopefully making sure it won't resonate with all people at all times, but it can resonate and be as representative as possible to the communities and what the UK or the world looks like and what their audience looks like.
And that's really important, isn't it? Because we all know in marketing, you have your set personas or you have your set people that you want to attract. But if there is this lack of diversity or lack of awareness, one, you're going to end up alienating, or it's just not going to resonate. And two, it's a massive missed opportunity as well. Yeah, so it just goes to, and in your example, that goes to show that, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I guess there is incredible importance in the idea of representation, but I think it's the idea of the missed opportunity there, that there is the business case for this as well, isn't there? And that shouldn't be forgotten.
And because businesses, at the end of the day, need to make money.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, we need money, and you need money to operate and do certain things. And yeah, like, obviously it is very important for representation, showing up diversity, but also, like, you got to think about different communities and their spending power as well.
Yeah. And I think also their influence on culture. You see it, I guess America is probably like a really sort of hyperbolized sort of version of this, that you see the influence different communities have on wider culture and how that spreads on social media or just in general, sort of like word of mouth. And that often a community can have real power on what influences culture, whether that's with a particular category like, shoes or whatever that is. There's a real impact on how that affects how other communities and other sort of audiences and personas then use their spending as well.
So I'm not gonna out your age or be like, so how many years ago did you graduate from uni? When were you sat in that room at Durham? But would you say that since that point things have got better, or is it still much the same?
Well, I won't completely out my age, but I'm still very, very junior in my career. So I would say it probably hasn't changed a lot at all. So yeah, I think Durham's probably more of a special case example. I think there are definitely other universities who have much more diverse sort of communities in there and have much more diverse sort of talent that's growing. But I do think it's one of those cases where there's still lots of work to be done. And I guess the university's looking at what does diversity look like at a junior level. But I guess there's this aspect of what does it look like on a senior level as well. And I still think that there's definitely work to be done there. And I think hopefully we're going in the right direction. I think people are more aware of it right now. People are making work to do, but there is, of course, systematic changes that need to happen and lots of different issues that we could talk about for ages.
And I suppose as well, it can be exhausting as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things where I remember when you're doing your LinkedIn, you're like, okay, what am I going to be talking about? What am I going to make my niche or whatever that is going to be? And you sort of think, okay, well, what's my perspective on things? And sometimes I have to say, like, I don't want my perspective to be the Black British perspective or the Black Gen Z perspective. Just because sometimes it's like, at the end of the day, I'm not a monolith. That's not everything and all about who I am. So I think part of it is also reminding yourself of your individuality and all of that. And the shared things that you have beyond sort of what we consider the typical sort of things of your race and your gender and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot more. So my example, there's a lot more to me than being a lesbian woman, for example. Yeah. Like, that's not my whole identity. I know it's a little bit different, but yeah, like, it's a way to relate to that point, isn't it? And also, so you gave a really good example with that advertising campaign that just kind of missed the mark. But I suppose if we think about SEO, then like, if you don't have representation or think about different communities, you're going to miss out on, because there's certain terms, certain queries, certain search terms that different communities, different people are going to be using. So an example how that would show up in the SEO industry, in the SEO world, is again, at missed opportunities, because there might be like a popular topic or search terms, search queries get a lot of volume that are really important to a community, which you could be writing about, your brand could show up for, you could show solutions for. But if you don't know, that's another missed opportunity.
Yeah. And I think even the way you use products, there are certain products I feel like in my head, I know, for example, I guess it's a really basic example, but like Vaseline for so many people is like for your lips, whereas growing up, Vaseline wasn't really for the lips, it was for other parts. It was like a skincare part of Vaseline. And I guess there's small little things where maybe you use a product differently, or the way what you associate with that product or service might be a bit different. And I guess showing up in those search terms could be a real opportunity that people just wouldn't know about.
Exactly. Sorry, as soon as you said put in Vaseline in other places, like,
wasn't quite the language I probably should have used, but yeah.
I know, I'm just like, because I would only ever think to put them on my lips, but it is very moisturizing, so of course you can use it in different places. And also like the language that you use in content. So have you ever come across written content or text or whatever, like because the words that we use are really important, and how we come across in the messages. So have you ever seen examples where that's missed the mark?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think sometimes we get it with, I think we talk about it often when it's sort of a global campaign, don't we? We talk about, like there's a bit of like a language divide, but that even within the UK, there's so much difference in slang and terminology when you go up north versus when you're in London versus when you're, in Cornwall.
Can I just add, so my sister went to university in Hull, and originally we're from, me and my sister from the East Midlands, and it blew my mind that they called a sandwich a bread cake.
Really? I never knew that. See, like even stuff like that, never knew.
But then for like the East Midlands, or like Midlands in the South, it's like, do you call it a cob? Do you call it a bap? Do you call it a roll? But anyway.
Yeah. I think even, what is it, like the sort of like hair bands, like so many people call them like hair bobbles. There's so many different like nuances that you get across. And I think that happens even within the UK, of course. And so there is often times where it misses the mark. And sometimes I have to ask myself, okay, but am I their target audience? So I think sometimes it can be easy to say it missed the mark. And then you're just like, oh, why did they do this? But sometimes I have to sit back and say, I'm not their target audience. And so that's fine that it didn't quite resonate with me. But I think sometimes it's been cases where there's sometimes where even within like the Black community, for example, there have been examples of someone's done something and it's made by the Black community for the Black community, but it's done in a way that doesn't feel right. So for example, often you have things where it can try too hard, that it almost feels a bit stereotypical. And I think there's that really sort of nuanced balance that needs to happen. And I guess it's because there's a conversation that needs to happen in the room several times to figure out, this is who we're going for, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to do it in a way that feels authentic and feels true. And yeah, I guess there's both sides of the coin where you need to sort of try and make sure it hits the mark, but you need to also make sure that you're not doing it in a way that feels stereotypical or feels a bit like, oh, they're trying too hard.
Yeah.
And I guess that's really hard, but it's a conversation that needs to happen. And I think if the conversation's happening, at least that's a step forward there.
Yeah, like you never want to think that it's like a tick box exercise, or that you're just doing something just because. Like it needs to be authentic. It needs to come from a place that isn't, I'm doing this to sell, or I'm doing this to look good, or I'm doing this to like come across a certain way.
Yeah.
You need to be doing it for the right reasons. And also you've got to make sure that I mean, maybe it's like tricky for some smaller businesses that don't have a big diverse team, but maybe that's an issue in itself, right? But like I think there's you've got to make sure that you're not like being stereotypical or thinking about something that you think is the right, but actually it's not, and you've not had people from different communities, or you don't have a diverse team to talk about these things, because then you can make sure that you don't miss the mark, or you like end up like offending a community. But then I suppose Like, I suppose those have challenges in itself because, yeah, teams are only going to be so big. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think part of it is just having that diverse community and having that diverse team. But I think part of it is also just social listening. I think there's so much happening on different platforms, in different forums. Reddit is a whole minefield in itself. And I think there's so much sort of really pure gems of what is happening in different cultures and different communities that can be found through social listening. And that's a lot easier said than done. But yeah, I think that's a real opportunity for people to say, okay, perhaps we don't currently have that sort of representation in our team right now, but what are people actually saying there? And what do they actually care about there? And sort of taking a little bit more time and resource, again, easier said than done, to do that bit of digging and say, okay, what are they talking about right now? What is the general sentiment around these things? Where are the potential pitfalls? And again, there's a business case for that, because you don't want to be on the other side of it where you've accidentally made that mistake. And so, yeah, I think social listening is a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Such a good point. Like, we've got access to tools, data, resources that we can be using to help us in social listening. Yeah, of course. Why would you not? And we do need to go to a short break because we're running out of time. This has been such a good conversation so far, but I suppose I just wanted to say again, like, brands, companies, individuals are going to get it wrong. Yeah, they're going to make mistakes. And I think sometimes there's, again, they miss the mark, or there's a missed opportunity when people don't hold their hands up, take accountability, say sorry, and put steps in place to be like, okay, we've learned from this mistake and this is what we're going to do going forward. Because I see a lot of the times when whoever's made a mistake or something's not quite gone right, or they've ended up offending somehow, like they either go quiet, don't they, or they go defensive or other things. Whereas I think sometimes just like, I just think about the times where in personal life or in your professional career, where you've made a mistake, I think you're much better if you hold your hands up and take accountability and say sorry. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on about that.
No, definitely. And I think there's something there on, I guess, there's the whole idea of boycotting or what people believe, or when they sort of make those sort of stance choices about whether or to what extent they're engaged in a company. But in the same way, like you were saying with your personal life, when someone does something wrong, then they're a bit more honest about it, and they put those things in place so hopefully it never happens again, or it doesn't happen in the same way, or you're making it sure those mitigating circumstances. You're more receptive to sort of having that forgiveness and having that grace to people. Whereas when it becomes a thing of defensive, it becomes a thing of, okay, well, this is going to happen again, isn't it? And it becomes a thing of, well, I don't really want to engage with someone when they're not being that way, the same way you wouldn't want to be for a person in your personal life. And I think a lot of brands are starting to understand that. And I guess in the age of cancel culture and go down all that route with sort of things, there's a bit more understanding of, like, you've got to be a bit more open to that and a bit more receptive that people are going to hold you accountable, especially with social media and so many things now open and transparent. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's room to be like, of course, people are going to make mistakes. Everybody will, but just sort of having those procedures in place and coming from like an honest and authentic place of, we've done something wrong, this is what we're going to hopefully do going forward to better that and to improve it. Yeah,
because you learn from your mistakes, don't you?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Yeah, you don't know until you try these things. Right. Shall we take a short break? Let people digest this wonderful conversation that we've had so far. I feel like we've covered quite a lot. And when we come back from the short break, we'll be talking about communities, and communities like Be Digital, which we'll talk about later, how can they help this issue? Sarah here, just quickly popping on to let you know about how you can support the podcast, how you can support me and Tasmin. So first things first, we are set up on Buy Me a Coffee, which means you can give us a one-off donation. Thank you to everyone who has done that already. If you fancy doing that, the link is in the show notes and we'd be very much appreciative. And another way is help us spread the word. Get more people to know about the podcast. Tell your colleagues, friends, loved ones, hey, even your pets. Next time you're listening to an episode and you think someone would really love it, find the link and why not share it with them? Be Digital UK is an amazing global community for Black people in marketing to meet, learn and elevate their marketing careers. With hundreds of members across the UK, US, Canada and Nigeria, it works to create a platform that empowers and lifts Black voices. Both its mixed Twitter, also known as X, community and separate women's and men's WhatsApp chats have seen people from students to C-suite change industries, get their dream roles and launch speaking careers. From social events, panels, marketing workshops and a community board for jobs and opportunities, there's plenty to get involved in. To follow and support the Be Digital community, check the show notes for their socials and more info. And to join the community, drop them an email or DM on Instagram at be_digital UK. Unapologetic in its mission to create a community for Black marketeers and improve representation and diverse talent in the industry, Be Digital works so every Black marketeer can be unapologetically themselves.
SEOs. Have you heard about Stat? Stat is a SERP tracking and analytics platform built for tackling large-scale SEO with accuracy and ease. Whether you're in-house or at an agency, juggling multiple sites, millions of pages, or just a ton of keywords, Stat tracks your search performance at scale without falling over. And since each Google SERP is a treasure trove of consumer research and made of more than just rankings, Stat is more than just a rank tracker. From SERP features to competitors, search volume to share a voice, you'll get everything the 100 Results SERP has to offer, parsed, analyzed, and delivered right to your doorstep every single day. It's pretty much the ultimate SEO insights tool. And with Instant Insight, you can unlock new search opportunities, drive more visibility, improve the value of the SEO work you do. Want to learn more about how you can succeed with Stat? Head on over to www.getstat.com or follow the link in the show notes.
Welcome back. We are here with part 2 and I feel like this has been a fascinating conversation already.
Yeah, it's been really good. And I think it's also given me stuff to think about, which is always lovely to have.
And hopefully it's the same for our listeners too.
Fabulous.
Right. So let's change the conversation up a little bit and talk about the impact of community and how that can help with this issue of lack of diversity and inclusion and all of that lovely stuff. So Be Digital, for example, tell us a bit about that community and how communities like that can help.
Yeah, so Be Digital, we are currently, I believe, the UK's largest Black in marketing community. So we have people across the UK, the US, various parts of Africa. And so it's a great community of Black marketers who get together, who uplift each other, who share events, who talk about current events and share jobs and opportunities, and really just having a space where you can recognize and you can show people who are coming into marketing or who have been in marketing for years that there are people who have similar experiences to them and who look like them and who often think like them in the industry, and that it's a viable industry for people to go into and not just go into but to thrive and have great careers. And so it's been really good because what has happened is we've got people who have gone from other industries like events into like SEO management, But we've also got people who are like students who have said, oh, I don't know really about this marketing thing. It's all social media, isn't it? And we go, no. There's lots beyond sort of social media and the big ads that you see that goes on behind the scenes. And so really exploring what that looks like, but also helping people say, okay, well, I've been in the career for 10 years and then making that step to get promoted or to go do speaking opportunities. And it's been a really great community of finding people around you who can say, oh, I've worked at that company before and I need help in this area, or like sending a text message and saying that, does anyone know anything about, I don't know, creative strategy? And someone saying, yes, I have lots of experience there. Let's chat. And so it's just become that great sort of space for people to connect and to make those sort of have those conversations and to make those friends and that community around them.
Wonderful. It sounds like a much needed community, and it's great to hear that you're thriving.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's one of those things where often it can feel a little bit weird to start to go into that space, because it feels a bit like, oh, do I really need this, or what impact is it going to have? But I think it's one of those things where sometimes you don't realize the rewards that you're getting from it and the impact that it's having until much later down the line sometimes. And I think there's definitely a need for this, but also in so many different areas and so many different sort of communities, whether that's sort of like neurodivergence or, you know, women in various parts. And I think marketing is so much more than what often people think. Like SEO tends to not be what people sort of first think of when they think of marketing, but it's such a needed area of marketing. So I think sometimes we need to sort of put our hands up and shout about ourselves a little bit more and shout about what we're doing and how there is space for people who are and have all these different sort of characteristics and how they can really find a career in marketing that they'll enjoy.
Because SEO is so diverse. Like SEO, there's space if you are more creative, if you're more data focused and you love getting stuck with the numbers, if you're really good at problem solving. Oh my days, you need to be in SEO.
Yep, definitely.
Every day there's a problem. But community is so important. And just speaking from my own experience, when I first got into SEO, I've been doing SEO since 2012. So, you know, getting some years on me now. But I remember, so one of the first communities that I joined was the fabulous Women in Tech SEO community, founded by Arij Abu Ali. And I just, as soon as I came across the community, it was such a relief and it was such an eye opener, because everyone was so supportive. Everyone was like there showing up for people. If you had questions, if you were stuck, there was someone in the community that has had a similar, or they've been there, done that, got the t-shirt and can give you advice and suggestions on what you can do. Even just times where you need a little vent or you need to lean on someone, like communities are so important. And also like there needs to be communities for lots of different types of people, like you say. And I think I remember seeing Arij talk about that community, and she was like, the reason I created this community was she felt at the time that there wasn't a safe space that she could feel supported in. So she was like, do you know what? I'm going to create it. And I love that. And it sounds like it's the same situation with Be Digital.
Yeah. Rejoice definitely. Rejoice is one of our partners, which she did a previous podcast that was all about stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yes, Rejoice. Yeah. Love Rejoice. I'll make sure I'm putting a mental note in to put a link in the show notes to that episode, because that was a cracking conversation.
Yeah. Rejoice is fab, and she's one of the co-founders of Be Digital, and I know when you speak with her, she has such a passion for it, because I remember she's been in the industry for longer than me, and she was always saying that when she was growing up that it was even more difficult, and it was difficult to find people, particularly in SEO, where she felt like there was that space, and so that's why she started it. I'm so thankful that she did start it, because now when you look at it, it's it's grown beyond just SEO. And so there's loads of people in SEO, but there's also now people who are creatives, who are in strategy, who are in social media and PR. And I think definitely that there's something there about having that safe space where you can feel like you can say something and people are just going to get it. Or if they don't get it, they're going to sympathize and understand sort of where you're coming from.
What is your advice? So maybe there's a listener who's part of a business, part of a brand, who wants to support a community like Be Digital. What are some ways that they can do that?
Yeah. I think one big thing, and I guess this is a big ask, so I'm saying that with that knowledge, is that people always need sponsorship. There's often so many events and opportunities that they're trying to put on. So sponsorship is a big thing, and I think people don't turn down sponsorship, is what I would say very rarely. But I would also say it's sharing the news and just being open to sort of following people on social media, following what they're doing, whether that's through their newsletter and seeing if there's any way that you can support them through there. Often, I guess the easiest way is just to ask. So often there's small little things that I won't know the nuances about, especially with different communities. But just to ask, how can we support? For example, Be Digital, we're having a bunch of 2025 is our year of training. We want to upskill people. We want to make sure that people can really learn whatever they need to learn. So sometimes it might just be someone coming in and giving a talk on where is your area of specialism, and sort of chatting about what you can do then, how you can grow and be better in that area. So there's lots of different things, but I guess the primary way is chat to them. They're human. They've got lots of different nuances going on behind the background, and find out what they want.
Lovely. That's lots of different ways to support, because there might also be someone who doesn't necessarily have money or the funds, but they still want to be able to support. So it's lovely to hear other ways, alternative ways. It's not always money. However, if there is someone listening from a business who has money, come on, dig deep.
Definitely.
How can people join Be Digital?
Fabulous. So I think there'll be a link in the show notes where you can get all of that. But we have a social media. We've got an Instagram. We've got LinkedIn, and so you can join via there. Or you could probably drop us an email as well. We're quite a close-knit group for now, just because we will all really make sure that that's a safe space for people. But definitely drop us an email. It's info@bdigital.co.uk. But it'll all be in the show notes for you to sort of see and see how you join. And we've got separate WhatsApp groups for just Black women, separate groups for just Black men as well. So there's that sort of extra level of space, but then shared Twitter communities. Everything's going on everywhere. So there's lots of different ways to get involved and join.
Lovely stuff. And I love that how the community is protected, it's good that you're doing your due diligence and people who are added, because I suppose communities are only as strong as their members or who's part of that community. So that's good to hear that you protect your members. It's a safe space.
Definitely.
Lovely. Well, there are a few questions that I just want to end with, because we ask all of our guests these, but I just want to double check. Have you covered everything? Is there anything else that you want to say around our topic today?
I think the only other thing to potentially add is that don't discount yourself. I guess often people think, oh, that community thing isn't for me. I'm not particularly struggling in any way of my career. But sometimes it isn't filling a gap. Sometimes it's a value add. Sometimes it's just that extra little bit of an extra little nice thing to add on, to have that place to go. And sometimes you think, oh, well, I'm not junior in my career, but sometimes it's sort of giving back to the community. And I think sometimes there can be a great benefit from that. So don't discount yourself because you might think, oh, but I'm not someone who's particularly struggling, or I don't have an underrepresented characteristic. Sometimes community can be built on things that at times might seem insignificant. So find your space in that. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. So thank you for, agreeing to get up so early at the crack of dawn.
No, it's been good.
And joining me for this awesome conversation. So I just want to make sure that I squeeze in these questions. What is the main takeaway you want people to leave with?
I think the main thing is that there is an absolute need for the diversity and representation of people, but I also think that to maybe redefine the way that you see diversity and representation, because I think often we have a very sort of narrow perspective on things, and so to remember that diversity and representation has the business case, but also is much beyond potentially what you consider just underrepresented characteristics, and that there's need for, because if I'm just sort of focusing just on the fact that I'm black and I'm a woman, or for example, you said like you're a lesbian woman, that often it can be a thing of you're just focusing on sort of those sort of characteristics. Whereas remember, like none of us are monoliths. And so having that understanding that diversity and representation can mean lots of different things, and sort of have an education around that. We all need a little bit of education around what that means for us.
Yes, lovely stuff. And I think you've already kind of answered my second question, which would be best career advice.
Yeah, I guess it's of a similar vein, where remember that you are that one-dimensional person, that you aren't that one-dimensional person. Oh, that's terrible. You are that one-dimensional person? You aren't that one-dimensional person. You have lots of things about you. For example, I'm always trying to learn how to crochet. I can never get it. My fingers just don't work in that way. But that is something about me. And I always say, oh, I'm not a data person, but I can be a data person if I need to. Love chatting to people, love qualitative data. So I think remembering that you are a person with lots of different characters, lots of different interests and strengths and areas of improvement. And so don't let that define or box you in at any stage of career, whether you're C-suite or a student who's just coming into the industry. Let that be a part of who you are.
Yeah, definitely. I just remind me of another cracking podcast episode where we had Josephine talking about the importance of hobbies and having a space for your creativeness, or to switch off, or to do something fun that's not just always work. Because not only do you learn a new skill, and you switch off, but you never know, like skills and things that you pick up are always transferable, right?
Definitely.
Someone awesome doing awesome stuff in the industry that you think people should follow?
Oh, I think one of them is Stephanie J. And she is doing awesome stuff, particularly on her LinkedIn. I think she's just hit the 10K mark, so fabulous for her.
Nice.
She's always shouting about different things. She's a great person. She's part of the community at Be Digital as well. And she's always one of the first people I know who uplifts other people, and who shares what she knows. And she's always there shouting about what other people can do to get into the industry, and to really sort of level up in their career. So Stephanie J is my person this week.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sorry to say I'm gonna have to call time.
No.
That's all we have time for. We're just gonna have to get you back at some point in the future, aren't we?
Fabulous. I wonder what we'll start off with then. Spirit animals this time. What's next time?
Who knows? Who knows? That's our teaser, isn't it? There you go. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been such an important conversation. And you said earlier, you're going to go away with things to think about. And I'm going to do that, and hopefully our listeners too. We will put your links in the show notes, and there'll obviously be links to the Be Digital community, so go and check that out. Where do you mostly hang out on social? Where are you?
Boring LinkedIn, I guess, but I've figured out how to make it work for me. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably one of the best places to catch me.
Do you know what? LinkedIn recently Especially since going freelance has become one of my favourite platforms.
It is. Once you get over the LinkedIn cringe, it's the place to be.
There's a LinkedIn cringe. I didn't even know that was a thing.
I think so. There's a slight cringe sometimes when you walk through before your algorithm hasn't quite worked out what you love.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
LinkedIn cringe, people. LinkedIn cringe. Well, yes. One last thing before we do wrap up is if you do enjoy the podcast, if you enjoy what me and Tasmin are doing, there are ways that you can support us. We are set up on Buy Me a Coffee, which allows you to give us a one-off donation so you can buy us a virtual coffee. So if you fancy doing that, head on over to the show notes. And we'd be very appreciative of that. Shout out and thanks to everyone who has already done that. It always warms my heart whenever I see someone who has supported and a lovely message. So thank you. And share our podcast, our episodes with other people. The next time you're listening to an episode, so I don't know, after listening to this, you might think, crikey, Sharon. I don't know why Sharon. I don't think I know a Sharon. Anyway, Sharon would love this episode. She'd love this podcast. Wherever you're listening, find the link and share it with them. Yeah. Like, we want this podcast to help as many people as possible. So if you could help us share, that would be fabulous. Right. That is me. That's my admin. Shall we say goodbye? Take care of yourself. And until next time.
Absolutely. Have a fabulous rest of your day, evening, night, wherever you are and listening to this.
Wonderful. Goodbye for now.
Hey SEOs, are you ready to strike more eureka moments? Then you'll need the ultimate SEO insights tool, Stat. Stat delivers precision search insights in any location, on desktop and mobile, every single day for keyword counts that start in the thousands. There's no more guessing who the competition is or how you measure up. Stat's powerful share of voice metrics and robust competitor tracking will keep you in the know and on top of the SERPs. With one-click CSV reports, handy APIs, and pre-built Looker Studio connectors, you can even take your SERP data to go to fuel deep analysis and ambitious experimentation. And that's just scratching the surface. Learn more about Stat at www.getstat.com or follow the link in the show notes.
The Be Digital UK community is a space for Black marketeers globally to meet, learn and elevate their career. With group chats, social events, workshops, panels and a community board for jobs and opportunities, it's unapologetic in its mission to platform and support Black voices in marketing. With hundreds of members in the UK, North America and Nigeria, the community comes together to teach, share opportunities and cheer each other on in their careers. No matter your background, whether you are a student, C-suite or somewhere in between. If you want to support or share the news, check the show notes to follow their socials. If you're a Black marketeer, then drop them an Instagram DM or email and join the amazing community.